Chapter 3, Ethics in Public Speaking, for use with the public speaking projects, Public Speaking the Virtual Text. Please note that this tutorial will not cover all of the material found in Chapter 3, and also there may be one or two items covered in this tutorial that might be slightly different than what is found in the chapter. When we talk about ethics, we're talking about making a judgment or a decision between what we consider to be right or wrong in a particular situation or in a particular context. One person may consider something to be ethical, but another person might not. And sometimes making certain decisions, ethical decisions, can involve making some very difficult and complex choices. An ethical speaker is also an honest speaker. You want to be honest about all the material that you include in your speech as you deliver your message to your audience. To be an ethical speaker, it's also important to avoid plagiarism. And plagiarism is when you take someone else's thoughts or ideas or statements and don't give them credit for it. So it's real important to cite your sources whenever you take another person's thoughts or ideas, to say who owns those thoughts or where those thoughts came from. Global plagiarism is when you take an entire piece of work, or in this case an entire speech that someone else has delivered, and present it and deliver it as your own speech. Patchwork plagiarism is where you take pieces of information from other people, don't give them credit for that information, and then put them into your presentation, of course not citing any sources for them. This slide shows situations in which it's important to cite material, and also situations where you don't necessarily need to cite material in your speech or in your presentation. A general rule of thumb is if you're not quite sure whether you should cite some material or not, it's usually better to cite it than not to. That way you know that you're covered and that you have properly cited your sources. It's important to use inclusive language in your speech. In other words, avoid using words or terms that may exclude members of one or more groups of individuals. For example, it's better to use the term firefighter rather than fireman. This is kind of common sense, but be sure to avoid using hate speech in your presentation and in your speeches, and feel free to use your speech as an opportunity or a venue for you to help raise social awareness about important issues that you may be passionate about. And also, please be respectful of members of the audience who may have different perspectives or different points of view. As an audience member, it's important to use critical listening. In other words, pay careful attention to the speaker's message so you can interpret and analyze the content of their message as well as the effectiveness of their message. And to be able to listen critically, to be able to do all this, it's important to withhold judgment on this until the speaker has finished their presentation. Then you can look back on it and then make those decisions. The Public Speaking Project's textbook, Public Speaking the Virtual Text, can be found at www.publicspeakingproject.org.